It's 4 p.m. On the agenda, the first thing is to call the meeting to order, which we have done. Second thing is to establish a quorum, which we do have 4 of the 5 members here, so we do have a quorum so we can proceed with the meeting. Second thing on the agenda is the public posting requirements. That has been taken care of by the district staff. Third thing on the agenda is to get an update or a briefing from the Service District Council in regards to the sunshine laws, and Tony is actually on the phone, on the speakerphone, and so I'm just gonna turn it over to him and let him tell us all the good stuff and bad stuff in 25 words or less, and we'll be happy.
25 big words, each one with me have 25 meanings. No, just briefly on the sunshine law, I know many of you have already served on local government advisory committees and are familiar, but it never hurts to get a refresher or an update. As an advisory committee to the Board of Supervisors, you are all subject to the sunshine law, which means that you cannot have any meetings or discuss outside a noticed public meeting any matters that may reasonably, foreseeably come before the committee. And since you have items that you vote on, say today, they may come back again a year from now. The conservative approach, and I'll tell you why I take the conservative approach, is that anything relating to your role of being a landscape advisory committee member, whether you think you've already taken final recommendation action or you don't think it'll come back, it always can come back. And so you should not discuss anything outside a noticed public meeting involving your, roles and the matters that will come before you or have to come before you as the Landscape Advisory Committee. The Sunshine Law was the legislative implementation of that, implements a constitutional provision in the Florida Constitution with regards to open government. The violations of the Sunshine Law can be a civil penalty. If you are unknowingly violate the Sunshine Law, or can take the form of criminal prosecution if you knowingly violate the Sunshine Law. And if you have the State Attorney's Office is tasked with pursuing violations, whether they be civil or criminal violations. And the press and the papers love to have photographs and articles about local government entities, advisory committees, or groups that violate the Sunshine Law, because that helps vindicate their concept that there needs to be more open government in Florida, and this way they keep bringing it to people's attention. When the courts have construed a meeting to be any form of communication between two people on the same governmental advisory committee or board, whether it be by telephone, by text, by email, by carrier pigeon, or in person, you cannot have those kind of meetings or conversations or communications with other committee members on any matter that will come before you, or has come before you, or could come before you, involving your role as a Landscape Advisory Committee member. You can talk individually with board members, or you can talk individually with staff members, but you cannot use other people as conduits. In other words, I can't talk with Paul, and Paul tells me, well, Dolores was, I can't tell Paul, hey, Dolores was telling me such and such, Paul. That's a conduit. You're doing indirectly, which cannot be done directly, and that also is a violation of the Sunshine Law. At times you can engage in fact-finding tours, but if you want to do that, please let me know in advance to make sure we are following appropriate guidelines. Besides the consequences of an action, either civil or criminal, being pursued against you individually, which you end up having to pay your own attorney's fees, action taken subject to the Sunshine Law that's in violation of the Sunshine Law can be set aside and is deemed void. So if an action recommendation is made and y'all have violated the Sunshine Law and goes before the board, and the board approves it and takes some action, somebody could attack that action as being void for a violation by the Landscape Advisory Committee of the Sunshine Law. I'll stop for a minute, and see if there are any questions right now, if I've gone too fast or not covered enough.
No, it doesn't really look like there's any questions. I guess the biggest thing as far as communication, as long as we each as individuals communicate directly with the service district staff, and the service district staff then communicates or shares that communication with the rest of the board, the other committee members, then generally that's okay, correct?
Except if you have a situation where, say, you, Paul, send a memo to Diane on a particular position on a particular item, and say she sends that out to all the board members, and they respond back, they can respond back to Diane, but if they respond back to you, that's a problem. Or if you respond back to Diane and she sends that out to all the other members, that's a problem, because again, that she's acting as a conduit to have that communication. Does that make sense? Y'all understand that?
If Diane sends an email to all of us, can we reply to all?
No.
Then we did that, I did that today, I replied to all, because,
Yeah, it's tough not to. I mean, I have actually hit the reply to all button when I should not have. But no, you should not, because that's a communication. That's an inadvertent. I wouldn't worry about that, Dolores, and I appreciate you mentioning that.
I just told them I would be here.
Yeah, it was just about.
No, that's okay. That's not a substantive matter. But that's okay. One thing I try to put in my emails, and I'm not always successful in remembering to do that, is whenever I send an email out to all my board members, on board supervisors, or on committee members I'm advising, I put in big bold letters. Please do not reply to all. If you have any comments or questions, please respond directly to me.
Okay,
So,
thank you for answering that.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. And again, simple things like, calendaring and that, those are generally routine administrative matters that aren't substantive, but it's still the safest course to not reply to all.
Makes sense.
Okay, any other
And,
thoughts?
and also, if y'all ever have any questions, Diane has my number. If y'all want my number, cell phone number, please feel free to give me a call. I take a very conservative approach to the sunshine law because of the possible, implications it has, adverse. Those always get my top priority, sunshine law.
I've already given out your home phone number, Tony, don't worry.
Well, okay, well, I don't answer that one, but my cell phone I do.
Okay.
I've had too many robocalls to my home phone.
Yeah, especially when it gets close to election time, right?
Yes.
All right, any other questions of Tony, or any other comments or thoughts? Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape. It doesn't mean we'll be
Thank you, Paul.
perfect
Thank you,
moving
committee members. I
forward.
appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Yep, all
Thank
right,
you.
appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, he's hung up. And yeah, I guess like he said, the big thing is just to send stuff to Diane and let her sort it out, and then she gets in trouble and we don't.
There you go. Works for me.
The next item on the agenda is a resignation of Paul Bode. Paul has resigned from the committee. I guess he's just getting too busy with work and that sort of thing. So that gets us back down to 4 committee members, and I think Diane gave you a copy of his email where he said he was resigning from the committee. So we need to do something to fill his position. I think we really have got one of 2 choices. Either we can go out and try to solicit to see if anybody is interested. That's really what we did the last time here a couple of months ago, when the other guy, who I've already forgot his name, dropped off. Or the last time we did it, we basically had 4 people that said they were interested. I sent each of those 4 people an email asking them to send me some kind of a bio sort of thing, and only got 2 responses, one being from Kevin, and the other one from Kathleen, who's actually in the audience today. So the second option we could have is to go ahead and simply move forward and appoint Kathleen as a member of the landscape committee.
I see no problem with that.
So does that mean that you're making a motion that
I'll
we should
make a
move forward
motion
and
then, yeah.
appoint Kathleen to
What do you
the
think?
board? And JB seconded that motion. Do we have any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So officially, as of 4:15, you're now on the committee.
Oh, okay.
So you're already behind us, you're not sitting up here. Why don't you grab one of each of those, just, oh, you got them already, okay, good,
I'm
thank you.
sorry, who seconded that? My pen died.
JB did?
Okay. It's like,
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. I just got one.
Welcome.
He gave me his
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the September 22nd meeting minutes. And just one thing I want to point out before I ask for a motion, in the meeting minutes, in item 5 under old business, item 5B, we talked about the landscaping on the north end of the Gateway Boulevard. And the way this is written up, it shows that the motion was made by Kevin, seconded by Dolores, and after no discussion, it was approved 3-0. So it was approved unanimously. After the meeting, there was some discussion as to whether or not that's actually what happened. Just for everybody's benefit, when I ask for approval of a motion after we've had the discussion, typically I don't ask for people to say yay or nay. I simply say, is there anybody opposed? And if I hear somebody make a peep, I'll count heads. And if I don't, I'm gonna say it's approved unanimously and move forward. And that's apparently what's on the meeting minutes. So I don't know if we wanna let it stand or if we need to discuss that further.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that.
Pardon?
I'd like to discuss B.
Okay,
And, you know, I had, I apologize for not being here, because I know it was an important meeting with the design work and that, but,
you wanna discuss what's in this? I mean, what we approved?
yeah, because,
Okay,
because
before-
even with that, Paul, I'm reading two different things.
Okay, well, before we do that, since you weren't at the meeting, can we go ahead and approve the meeting minutes?
Uh,
And then whatever we change, we will make as a correction in this meeting minutes, once we get these approved?
I was gonna say, I did not vote to approve these. This was,
Is that okay, JB?
Well, I'm kind of, even though I kind of am agreeing with Dolores, because when I see here is a motion to approve plan presented by Insight. But then I read like a postscript down there, and it says, Scott will continue to work and the conceptual, oh, I'm sorry, I read it wrong, and the conceptual plan will be reviewed by Lee County. Oh, okay, I thought it meant the conceptual plan that we were still working on, even though a plan was approved, the conceptual was still being worked on, so I apologize, I read it wrong.
Okay,
But,
alright, but, okay, so back to Dolores, you're saying you don't agree that it was a 3-0 vote?
no, cause I didn't approve of the planting. I
Okay,
didn't want-
but the minutes are gonna stand as they are, and we'll put a correction in the meeting minutes this time that Dolores felt she didn't vote in favor of, but the motion at that time still carried. Is that right, Diane? Is that the way to do it?
I gave a second so we could discuss it.
Right, but when I asked if anybody was opposed, nobody spoke up.
I just didn't make you hear me, I guess.
Okay, well, we'll make that note in the
Okay,
minutes,
so we're gonna,
but the motion still carries.
motion still carries.
Yeah, cause it was two.
It'll be a
It would have been 2-1.
Yeah, okay,
So,
so
but
we'll
the
just
motion still
correct that.
carries, but Dolores, you
Okay.
just need to put a statement in there that she felt she was not in favor of it, or was not capable of voting for it,
Okay, all right.
okay? So then, with that correction, Dolores, you gonna make a motion to approve the minutes?
Okay.
Okay, so Dolores has a motion to approve the minutes, and since Kevin was the other person here, do you second it?
Yes.
Any other comments or discussion? Any opposed? So the motion carries unanimously. So those minutes stand. It didn't have anything, we didn't show anything under old business, but we did have the one item that really is the RFP, which I thought was kind of what the focus of us being here was really all about. And I don't know, Kathleen, did you look at any of the proposals?
I
Did
did
you
Got
s-
to bring those.
I did look at the
Okay,
proposals.
okay.
So those are the ones that were on Gateway Services,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
but
okay.
I had them beforehand.
Okay, so the only thing that we really have on the agenda to get accomplished today is to go ahead and rank them. We actually got 4 proposals that we received from Bruce Howard and Associates, David Jones, Land Architects, and Morrison Depew. And Diane had sent out some scoring sheets several weeks ago, and asked that we do them in advance. I don't know if anybody did or not.
I
got some-
did, and I
got
left it
some-
at home.
I got some blank copies, if we need to put anything more, or need to redo them, or
You need
whatever.
one.
So we need to somehow figure out how we're gonna move forward to, rank these and then make a recommendation, back to the, Board of Supervisors.
Okay, Dolores, do you wanna look at these copies?
I have a couple.
Yeah, mine are here too, so,
Thank you.
I wish I had mine.
you know. Oh, that's not it. I guess that's all four there. But if you want, I'll start and just tell you how I ranked them and what order I picked and how I got to that, if that is helpful. And then I guess we can each do the same thing, and then tally up the scores and as a group, figure out how we're gonna rank them. Does that sound like a
Yeah, it does,
plan?
yes.
Okay, what I did is, based on the information that Scott put together in the ranking sheet, we had an item for past projects awarded, local preference, project personnel, project approach and understanding, professional experience. And I actually added two more categories to give them some bonus points. One being whether or not they had experience with the Lee County Roadway Landscape Committee, and the second one, if they had experience as far as putting together a landscape master plan. So while Scott's total was 100, mine would have potentially been 110, because I just said each one of those two bonus points were worth 5 points. On the first category, past projects, the way I scored it, out of a total of 10 points, I gave them 4 points if they had roadway experience, 4 points if they did a design and didn't have any claims or lawsuits, and 2 more points if they did a roadway design for some local municipality. So that equaled the total of 10 points. When I scored each one of the 4, I gave 8 points to Bruce Howard, 10 to Dave Jones, 10 to Landscape Architects, and 10 to Morris Depew. The next column was local preference, and I just said if they had an office in Southwest Florida, they got the 5 points, and if they didn't, they got 0. And again, not necessarily where they did their work or what their work experience was or whatever,
But where
just
their office.
where their office was. So again, that meant that I gave Bruce Howard 0 points and gave 5 points to each of the other 3. On the project personnel, alls I did was look at the number of people that the firm claimed they had according to their response to the RFP or RFQ. So I ended up giving 25 points to Morris Depew, 20 points to Dave Jones, 15 points to Land Architects, and 10 points to Bruce Howard. And again, that was simply based on the number of people they claimed they had working for them. The next category, which I think is really the big one, it typically, in doing something like this, how they're gonna approach the project, is to me what's probably most critical, the personnel that they're gonna put on the project and how they approach it. Looking at them, from high to low, I thought Dave Jones did a very good job of putting in his, write-up, a scope of how he would go after the project. So I gave them 30 points for that. I thought he actually had done the best job as far as explaining what his approach was. Land Architects talked about an approach, but from a very general standpoint, and it was all wrapped up in the services that they would provide. So I gave them 20 points. Bruce Howard and Morris Depew provided no specifics, in my opinion, on what their approach to the project was. So I gave each of them 10 points. And then the last category was professional experience. It was worth 25 points. I gave them 5 points if they did design work for FDOT, or if they referenced that they had done design work for the State Department of Transportation. 5 more points if they did it for Lee County. 5 points if they had actual roadway experience, and 10 points for any landscape experience. So that gave me 10 points to Bruce Howard, 25 to Dave Jones, 25 to Land Architects, and 20 to Morris Depew.
So Land Architects and David Jones, in your opinion, have had more experience with Lee County
Correct.
and the roadways?
Correct. Then under the two bonus categories, the only person I gave any bonus points to was to Land Architects, because I know of their dealings with the owner of the company, Phil Pricey, was on the Lee County Landscape Advisory Committee for quite a while. So when I totaled up the points, the way I ranked the firms, I had David Jones first, Land Architects second, Morris Depew third, and Bruce Howard fourth. And again, it was just simply based on the addition of all those numbers.
So you think that the fact that they have worked for Lee County helps us because Lee County's going to say you can or you cannot have?
Right, because Lee County's gonna be doing the review, and Lee County's also gonna be looking at how the project is maintained after the fact.
Well, why did you, now I was leaning towards Land Architect, but you, gave David Jones more for the project approach and understanding.
Correct.
So that's what made you think they should be number one.
Actually, that's absolutely right, yes. That's where my difference was between the two.
It makes sense to me.
I wasn't as detailed as Paul, but that really was the key in my analysis of all this. All these people, you know, after, you know, working in this profession for 40 years in Southwest Florida, you bump into everybody here, and, you know, sooner or later you have contact with everybody on different projects, and they're all very professional, and that's why they've lasted in the business. But the thing that I did see with Dave Jones's presentation is that Paul called it a scope. I called it that he itemized, and I thought that was important from the aspect of, you know what they're gonna do. Everybody else kinda talked in these broad terms, so it's like, well, what are we really getting from them? And then the other part was, on that part, only two of them actually gave an itemized cost page.
And those two were, I've got them marked in my books and I didn't.
Yeah,
bring
one
them.
was Dave Jones, and I wanna say the other one was Morris.
Yeah, I think Morris Depew did, yeah, I think you're right.
Well, I know I've been an advocate for Bruce Howard, but I was sorely disappointed in the booklet that he sent out, because it didn't give us enough that made me think he could work with us on this.
Yeah, well, I think some of it's like JB said, I'm sure any of them could do the job, but yeah, his just his approach to his write-up, not necessarily his approach in this column, but overall, the way he put the write-up together, I just didn't think he really answered.
It didn't seem to
What was
have
in the
enough
RFQ.
personnel either, did you think?
Well, it's really just him and his son.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that that's necessarily a negative. I mean, it's not gonna take a lot of staff to do this job, but still, it is a concern.
Do you know them, Kevin?
No, no.
So you're like me, you're going on what they put in their books.
Yeah, my evaluation, I evaluate a little differently, but I had Land Architects just barely in front of David Jones, and then same thing, Morris Depew third and Bruce Howard fourth. I think the only difference between, in my mind, Dave Jones and Land Architects were that even though David Jones' proposal was very process, and he laid out his whole process of what was gonna take an effect, it appeared to me that Land Architects' current projects, with Bellaterra and some other ones, or more recent ones, were more community-based projects, that would be similar to our, property. So I was looking for also design, the design look, where I think David Jones, well, the other thing, Landscape Architects, the gentleman had been on the Lee County landscape for a very, very long time, so he's very familiar with that, whereas David Jones is currently on it, so obviously has a flavor for it, but I just got a little bit better feel that Landscape Architects current and most recent book of business was more in line with what the Gateway community was. But I could be swayed either way. I mean, it was so close to call. Okay.
And, you know, I'm looking at Paul and Kevin's analysis. Mine actually reflected Paul's, and I think, you know, from what I'm hearing from everybody that's taken some time and tried to figure out some kind of scoring on this, it looks like we're with, number one and number two are interchangeable from the aspect of Dave Jones and Landscape Architects. I had ended up ranking Dave Jones first and Landscape Architects, or Land Architects second, Morris Depew third, and then Bruce Howard fourth. And, you know, I wasn't as detailed as Paul, but it still ironically came out.
But you still like Davy Jones?
Yeah, ironically though, when you look at the master plan issues, if that is gonna be a weighted item, I mean, that's all up to, you know, how we look at it. David Jones had the least amount of experience with master plans.
But he is on the Lee County Board now, isn't he?
Yes,
Yeah, but I think just fairly recently, where Bill was on it from, I think from day one. if I
yeah, from the
remember.
inception.
For
Yeah.
many, many years.
Landscape.
Yeah.
And then Bill had been on it now for about 2 years or so.
Right.
Then he would have more knowledge.
Well, you know, I don't know how you measure that, because a lot of Dave Jones' work is on streets. So, you
Is
know,
it?
that,
Right.
if you look at his projects, what he presented was his street work.
Right.
So, you know, streets and roadways, so, you know, which way, you can look at a master plan, and that's, you know,
Well,
all
I
the
tell you
streets.
what, we've eliminated Bruce Howard, haven't we?
I think so,
I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Number 4 would
Yeah.
say he's been eliminated.
right,
And it doesn't sound like anybody's really open with Morris Depew. And it seems like all of us have, I mean, I was going with Bruce Howard and David Jones until I read all the things in Bruce Howard, and then I changed my mind. So David Jones was my first choice, but I'm open to changing my mind between those two.
You say Dave was your first choice or land architect? Kevin?
Land architects, but not by much.
Okay. How about Kathleen?
Well, I didn't rate them,
Uh-huh.
okay, but just looking quickly through, I liked Land Architects. I thought it was the more Lee County experience, since we're gonna be dealing with Lee County.
I feel
That
that way too,
was-
yeah.
Who do you think you would put as number 2?
I would put, David Jones. I didn't like
Okay.
these two. I'm not really experienced, but what I read, I didn't.
Okay, so if I got this right then, I've got Dave Jones first.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yeah.
Dolores, can we have a final ranking, do you recall?
Sorry.
And other than saying David Jones number 1, maybe I missed something.
Well, what I got from Dolores was she had Dave Jones first, land architect second,
Uh-huh.
Morris Depew third,
Okay.
and Bruce Howard fourth.
Okay, thank you. I was busy writing, I apologize.
I kind of forgot where I was. One other comment, just so everybody's aware, there is one firm that's missing from this list, and that is Ensight. Ensight's the people that did the design on the very north end of Gateway Boulevard. To be very honest, they screwed up on the time, and that's why their submittal is not in this package. They missed the cutoff date. And
So we don't even consider that?
we can't consider them, no. The board was kind of giving us a little bit of a hard time, because why didn't we solicit them? But they got the same letter as everybody else, and they just messed up. Stuff happens. But anyways, just so everybody
We wanted
knows.
to make that medium correspond with the rest of the boulevard, but if they messed up, then
Yeah.
it will just be
Can't-
different.
Can't help that.
I have a question. Since Jones and Land's architect are relatively close, is what I'm hearing. Do we have an opportunity to interview these people, or do we just go based on what they provided us in writing?
My opinion, my thought was that from this committee, you make your recommendations. And if you want to shortlist them as we have, the top two, if you say, if you will, have them come and do a presentation. I don't know if the board will want to hear the presentations as well. You know, I hate to make them do it twice. The board has the ultimate say. You have the recommendation, the posture of recommending. You can, I guess we can ask them to come twice. I mean,
We could, yeah.
We could.
The RFQ is, the way it was put together is kind of left it open-ended, that we could select from the letter, or we could make it a two-step process and select from the letter to shortlist, and then have them do some kind of a verbal, oral presentation. So we can really go either way. The thing that gets a little bit difficult is if we make them come in, you know, is the board gonna buy our recommendation, or are they gonna make them come back again a second time, and that's flip a coin, who knows?
that's the unknown, yes.
Well, what if we did the interview at the board meeting? We showed up at the board meeting.
They already have their meeting set up though, don't they?
Well, I mean, we could get it later in the month, in next month.
Well, I guess my question is, what do you hope to accomplish from an interview?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm trying to get is a flavor for what their design would be. I mean, everybody's gonna go through the same steps, in my opinion. They're gonna do the conceptual design, they're gonna come back. I mean, I don't think what Dave Jones wrote in his proposal is anything earth-shattering. It just outlined what a normal process would be,
Sure.
okay? And I think that's why we're leaning to that, is because he took the time to write that out. The end result, though, is what is his design, what are the designs gonna be? How are they gonna, what are we gonna feel about, or the board gonna feel about what the end product's gonna be like?
Well, and I don't know, maybe this is some frustration from missing the meeting with Insight, because the things that I've heard from people not on the board about what Insight proposed and what was you know, passed, I don't know if we're gonna, you know, I think we should have the input in telling them what our vision is, and not them telling us what they think the vision should be. You know, we have
Okay.
people here that live, I mean, everybody here has a vested interest in here. And I'm not saying that what we have, what we may propose, or what thoughts that we have on certain plants is the ultimate answer. But, you know, whoever we work with, cause all these folks will work with us, you know. You know, I think we're still the ultimate in regards to, you know, we're kind of, as a group, we feel like we should have this kind of flavor going forward, and, you know, what do you think about these plants in regards to it? And, you know, I read something, and it still sticks out in my mind from one of these people, and I don't really wanna say the name, but they were talking about, as you know, as the oaks get older, they shade out all the bottom plants. Well, you know, I really feel like part of our program, and something that we should have as a line item in there, is a X number of dollars every year, cuts a section of Gateway Boulevard in regards to thinning out these trees. And, you know, maybe we'll get lucky and get the whole boulevard done in, say, a 5-10 year plan, whatever, without a hurricane. But if not, at least half the boulevard wouldn't get bulldozed over in a hurricane, because right now we just got a big wind sail up there.
Right.
So, you know, when I see those kind of comments, and I just know that part of it, you know, landscaping is only good as the maintenance that you get after you put it in the ground.
Now, you're not talking of getting rid of the oak trees.
Oh, definitely not. That's our flavor.
But what you're talking about is maintaining the plants they put under them so that they don't look.
Well, yeah, you know, and it's not just maintaining the plants under the canopy, it's maintaining the canopy. I mean, we've got a bigger issue that we really need to address. But I still feel like the flavor that we give whoever it is, whether it's Land Architects or whether it's Dave Jones, you know, we kind of give them our thoughts and feelings in regards to, how we visualize this, and then let them come back, you know, with that feeling, you know, this is from what everybody here has inputted, this is kinda, you know, create with our ideas, you know, it's,
I agree with
it's kinda
that.
like impressionism, I guess.
Yeah,
But I mean, Ellie knows that there are certain places where certain plants just aren't gonna work. And, but here again, that same plant may be better in another place, and it still adds to the overall concept. So I don't know if having an interview with any of these people, is gonna.
it wouldn't help you get a feel of whether we could
solve
work with
anything.
them or not.
Well, you know, here again, I go back to, I've worked or been exposed to all four of these folks,
Have you?
one way or another, yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you feel? Is David Jones number 2 and Lance is number 1, or is it the opposite?
Well, here again, it goes back to how, you know, we look at it as a group, you know, 3 of them probably have more extensive master plan experience. And I don't know if that's, you know, is the tipping point. Whereas David Jones, his background, I mean, when you read what he has here, it's a lot of street work. So he knows those issues too, just from a different, you know, it's like there's more than one way to skin a cat. So it comes at it from a different angle. The thing that I've been exposed to with David Jones is that they're very, very flexible. You know, they're here to solve your problems, and they're here to take in your ideas and your feedback to create what you want as a community, and not necessarily how they see the street.
I like that.
So.
Well, and you've done a project, or they've done a project with use of contacts, you would have a good feel for that.
Right. But I've also seen, you know, I haven't had a project with Bill Prissy, but I've watched him and his very astute comments on the roadway, Lee County Roadway Landscape Committee. So I know, and then when you read some of the things that they have done here, you know, it's big time stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I looked at was the Bella Terra, the Entrada, those are all master plan communities.
Right.
And if you know, if you visit those, they have a certain look to them, so, but your point's well taken either way, so
I
Yeah.
would really like to see us pick someone and be ready to hit the road running when they get through with the paving. And to have another meeting, draw it out another month or 2.
Just clarification, WCI is gonna be working for the next 4 or 5 months on redoing the roads.
Yeah, all
Before
the
they're
road
done.
work's not gonna be done probably till February, March.
So we got plenty of time to have a meeting.
Well, we don't have plenty of
No.
time, because when you think about what they've gotta do just to get started, I mean, it's still a process before you ever put a plant in the ground. Because one of the things we need, whoever's gonna do it, is to go out and get some community
Here.
feedback.
Yeah.
And that's gonna take some public meetings, that all takes time to get set up
Right.
and then to digest the information and whatever. Well, I guess what I've heard so far is we've got one person that would like to do an interview and one person that would like to pick from the letter. I'm ready to pick from the letter myself.
it's fine with me then, that's fine.
You know, as JB said, you know, Dave Jones and Land Architects, they're probably very similar, in their abilities. I agree with JB that Dave Jones has done a lot more actual roadway design. Bill's been involved with both ends, but probably not as much roadway design, but both of them are very capable and I think would be very willing to work with us, and, we just need somebody to make a motion as to who's first, who's second, and take it to the board. Yes, Scott?
I just make sure we're all on the same page and clarity, if I may. Just wanna let you know, the budget line item for the upcoming year is just $25,000. It's been chopped more than once from your earlier recommendations. And then additionally, as far as procedure, you make a recommendation, whether we do interviews or not, it doesn't matter, but then it goes to the board will then make a selection. Then we'll engage with them, this firm, whoever it is, and then we negotiate, and within our budget of $25,000 for this upcoming year. And then whether we get, they're just basically doing overall conceptual. They're not doing working drawings. Okay, because I thought I heard you say to Laura that you wanna see something in the ground. Well, that's not their marching orders in this phase of work.
Yeah, right.
Am I right? Is that,
Well, with the budget that's there, yeah, we're a long ways from putting plants in the ground.
but I just wanna make that clear for everybody. So we all are on the same page.
Well,
We do, we
I'm
do have
okay.
some money in the budget for plant replacement, but it's not a total redo, right now. We're just doing the conceptual plan for the community, and then the next year it'll go forward and on a rehab.
But I think, and not to try to disagree with Scott, but I think what we need to do as a committee is push to make that happen as soon as possible. Because
Yeah.
budgets can be changed and,
Absolutely.
the board has said, we want this done, but then they take the money that we asked for and they cut it, twice, so it's down to a quarter of what we thought was maybe realistic. So, yeah, we still got an uphill battle to actually get something done, but I think we need to charge full speed ahead as best as we can, and we'll let Scott worry about the money.
We do have a line item in here of $50,000 for this year for plant replacement. You didn't hear that, but. Anyway, that's just to tell you where we are budget-wise and get the full picture. Thank you. I agree with you, Paul.
But the one thing that might be to our advantage is to move forward as quickly as we can, at least get it to the board and see if they're gonna agree with what our recommendation is. And then we just live with it, good, bad, or indifferent, but.
Well, how did you come out when we told you what we liked? Are we more for land or more for David?
Well, what I had, and I'll just go in order, I had Kevin had Dave Jones number 2, I had him number 1, you had him number 1, JB had him number 1, and Kathleen had him number 2. Then Land Architects, Kevin had them number 1, I was 2, you were 2, JB was 2, and Kathleen was 1. So if we were simply looking at numbers, that would put Dave Jones first and Land Architects second,
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion,
okay?
that the landscape board suggests to the big board that Dave Jones do our conceptual work, landscaping work for Gateway Boulevard.
Okay, so we would make the recommendation to the board that they go ahead and select Dave Jones to start with the master plan. Do we wanna give them, overall an order for all 4 firms? Council, the board knows.
I would like to include that in our report, yes.
Okay, well, that order would be Dave Jones, Land Architects, Morris Depew, and, Bruce Howard.
That's a
Right.
good idea. That's a really good
That's the
idea.
ranking, yep.
Okay,
That
So,
way they'll
Jane-
know how we feel.
right, so JB's made a motion that we move forward with Dave Jones. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So Dolores is seconded, so JB made the motion, Dolores seconded it. Do we have any discussion? Any other thoughts or comments, or?
In case something should fall through, can we go back to the second, like say David Jones pulls out on us, where we could use Land's Architect as our second choice?
Well, typically, I think when you make a recommendation to a board, the reason you rank them is so that if you can't negotiate with number 1, you have the right to go to number 2.
Yeah, that's what I meant,
But
yeah.
once you go to number 2, you can't go back to number 1.
Yeah.
They're out. And I assume that the board would concur with that if,
I think so.
okay. So, yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any opposed?
Just one quick question, if I may. Is that with or without a presentation to you versus the board, or both?
Well, we're not asking for a presentation. We're gonna make a
Okay.
recommendation based on the letter.
All right,
If the board wants to ask for a presentation, I guess that's their option, because ultimately they make the decision, correct?
Yeah.
that's,
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously, 5-0. And that's really all we've got on the agenda. Just one other thing I wanted to mention, at the last meeting, we did talk about the plan that Insight had brought up, the landscape plan that we put together, and
Is that still, I mean, is that set in stone?
Well,
well, we approved a plan. That plan, when it went to the board, was actually slightly different than what we approved. And the board approved it, so I guess based on the board approval, it is set in stone.
no. I'm pulling up our website, because the board instructed us that they haven't made a final decision. They instructed us to put on our website both the Insight plan and the plans that were done by Mainscape in the past, to see what kind of feedback we got. As of today, it's been on there for a month, and I'm trying to think where that would be.
News.
Under news, sorry, my bad. No feedback has been received from anyone.
Cause nobody goes on the website.
So, I think your monitors will show what it is now.
Well, they're all turned off.
Oh, okay, yeah, turn them on, you should.
Oh, I can see this one.
So this needs to come back, because we delayed the planting in order to get the lighting, the new roadway lighting bid, and, complete the design bid and constructed, and, then we need to still bid out the landscaping. So, with that said, the first one is Mainscape's drawings that you all went over a couple times in here, and then then there's the Insight plan, which I think is coming up here. We haven't, that's the typical one there, not the full plans. So, we haven't got any comments either way. That's what the board said to do. I need to bring it back up to the board and give them an update, and I'll probably do that, not on the 5th, but the 15th, or 19th, whatever the November, second meeting in November is, and give them an update. I was gonna take the initiative and go get bids on the Insight plan. Bid that out. At least then we'd have a contractor on board, ready to go, when that time hits, and then we can make, modifications. Once we get a contractor on board, you can do a change order and change the gap if something changes in the interim. I have had one board member suggest we put all these plans into a questionnaire and create a website and send a questionnaire out with a utility bill to, let the community vote.
How do you
But-
feel about
I think it's,
Again,
I don't like it.
one supervisor made that
Too much
recommendation,
Not at
and
all.
I need a board direction, so I'll bring all that back up and see what happens, but
If I was gonna go
I
with
think,
either one, Mainscape's better than that one.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's where we are. I think there was some discussion as to how the committee voted.
Did you have some comments you wanted to make, JB? Well,
Yeah.
let me ask, before I ask you that question, we did get a couple of comments actually from, Mainscape. And one of their comments was, that they're concerned with the size of the silver buttonwood, that it's, if it's a multi-trunk, buttonwood, that it theoretically will be wider than the median. And I would make the same comment about the, oleanders, mature oleander is a 10 to 12 foot wide plant. And Lee County's gonna be on Mainscape big time to keep it trimmed back behind the back face of the
Right.
curb. And what you're gonna end up with is plants that are they're just gonna be sliced, and you're gonna see all this wood when you drive by, and the only color is gonna be on the crown, and you know, maybe not so much with the buttonwood to me, cause I think you could go with a single or maybe a 1 or 2 trunk of buttonwood, and it wouldn't be so bad, but I don't think the oleanders fit that plan at all, my
They
opinion.
They don't.
But anyways, JB, you had some comments?
Well, yeah, I see these, you know, well, the good news is that if oleanders are maintained, or installed, because of all the carbon monoxide, we won't have the oleander caterpillar.
That's true.
So that's one good
We know
thing.
they do good in roadways.
Yeah, right. All the carbon monoxide is our way to keep the caterpillars off. But, you know, what I'm seeing on this visual is they've designed the oleanders to grow like crepe myrtles.
Yeah,
And-
because you have to maintain clear sight distance, you know, 24 inches above pavement to 7 feet.
Okay.
Or whatever it is.
Well,
6
either
feet.
way, whether it was crepes or, and, you know, crepes wouldn't be good because they lose their foliage during our season.
Right.
But I agree. What I see here
Where are you
is,
seeing oleand? Oh, there they are.
The pink balls are
Yeah.
I
all
thought
the-
they weren't on the original plan.
They were not on the original plan, no. It got changed from what we approved to what went to the board. That's when the oleanders were added.
So the
Yeah.
board made these changes.
Yes,
No.
somebody on the
No.
board did.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Can
I just know that they were added after we approved the
Well,
plan.
Can I make a comment
Well-
on that?
I'm trying to recall.
The insight came with those in the plan to the board. when
That's
they
right, that's what
presented-
they took to the board.
Right, but
But that's not what they presented to us.
No. But that.
Yeah, our recommendation was this plan without the Fakahatchee grass.
Right,
Right. Yep.
So, okay.
well, I have one, my first question. Some of the suggestions that I made on an email to you after Scott said if we had any, after after the August meeting, did those ever get relayed to Insight? I had sent it to you. Yeah. Cause I, you know, had suggested back, you know, I kinda reiterated the statement about using thatch palms, cause they were natives. And, of course, you know, the peanut grass and then some alternates there if we wanted to have like dwarf ixoras or, anyhow, the whole gist of that email, and I can find it, was, you know, to try to keep people off the roadway to be targets. And, you know, what I see here with silver buttonwood and oleanders is a lot of maintenance out there that puts people in it's a tight area.
You
Right.
were gonna use the thatch palm instead of the,
Alexander's.
Alexander palms? I like that a lot
Is
better.
that a similar,
No,
No, it's a palmate rather than a pinnate leaf. It's a much slower, and we probably couldn't get. You know, I think they're you know they're trying to create, when you really look at this, an arboreal hedge. You know, everything up through the standards that you're saying, which, you know, I can understand that and appreciate that. But, you know, the amount of maintenance that I see going on out there is just
And
I
that's
don't
what
think
we
we've
don't want.
solved anything.
these are very, very ugly. And the thatch palm is beautiful. It's really,
Well, it's a native, and it does have more beef to it.
yes,
As
but
it
can
grows.
you get it up out of the sight distance?
no.
Well, you can buy them 6 to 8 foot of wood. I mean, they're a little expensive, they're a little pricey, but just to have instant gratification, I don't think that really solves. I mean, you know, we have this native flux with all our oaks as we go into the project, and I don't know why we wouldn't maybe try to use some natives in regards to
Why is
you
it
know, our
one,
palms.
why is it one roadway has to see the other roadway? Is
Well,
that a-
say if you're pulling out of Stony Brook and you wanna go make a left turn out of Stony Brook,
You'd have to see.
you
the-
have to be able to see back to the right, and it's an engineered distance,
Right.
so to speak, that you have to be able to look to see an oncoming car. And the standards come from FDOT, that's where they come from, and that's what Lee County said they wanted to have met.
Well, you couldn't see with a thatch palm, cause it's, unless, like he said, you pay and get a big one.
Well, what's the minimum sight under under a canopy?
I thought it was 24 inches to 7 feet.
What they wanted.
Okay, 7 feet, so you'd have to buy, trees that have about minimum 7 foot.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yeah.
And the oleanders are not gonna be pretty if they don't have something down here.
No, no, if you looked away, and that's what JB was saying, they kinda look like they're being cut like a,
Yeah,
So that's-
Great
not
myrtle.
good.
grape myrtle, and it just, that's not the way they grow, and it's gonna create a lot of maintenance problems, I think, for Mainscape. And in a skinny median, that's just a bad spot for them to be.
Scott, take us back to Mainscape's, design.
You think I'm that good, don't you? Hang on. I'm trying to recall.
Maybe the back button there?
Yeah, thank you. There were there were two of them. I mean, I don't know what you wanna look at the.
Now,
That
to
one?
me, that looks more, don't you think, more aesthetic than the oleanders and,
Well, the initial impact, definitely is from what Insight created. You know, that's like instant gratification. This will take a little bit of time
To grow
Did you
in.
write
to
them?
grow in,
From when?
which isn't the worst thing in the world. That's just buying time on maintenance on the roadway.
This one doesn't show any annuals
Sure.
either.
Yeah.
No.
well, that's all right with
which
me,
meeting was
cause I
that?
think they're hard to maintain anyway.
Well, it's a budget that, you know, if you use the right plants, you'd be
Here's some
more,
notes
I
from
think.
the-
I mean,
the
everybody has, you
Meeting with Mainscape
know,
and
6 one half dozen the other. People like
Diane marked
annuals at
down-
the same time.
replace the Fakahatchee, but everything else is okay.
Can you
According
Can you
to
get better
discussion
bang
with the
for the
committee.
amount of money you
Yes,
spend? How many
according to-
times a year?
Yeah, I
3
agree
times?
with the committee, that's correct,
Yeah.
yep.
See,
That's
they
a lot
can
of
get
labor that
very-
we're paying
they
for.
can get very
The only thing we told them to
Yes.
take out was the Fakahatchee.
Okay, and they replaced it with oleander.
No,
they
they
are.
replaced it with something else, I don't know what.
Yeah.
They are most of the time.
But maybe the
Then you have to
annuals
go back
is
and look
something
at the plan. I
because
don't
here
know what
again,
they
that's a
replaced
labor
with
issue that
Fakahatchee,
you use it where
but
you're
they added,
going into
see,
subdivisions.
they just had
Here,
the palms here.
some of these
the
aren't going
buttonwood in
into
the middle, And then
subdivisions,
this
you know,
was
they're
all
just
just,
medians to
low growing
slow down
plant,
traffic.
Green Island ficus.
So it.
This is where they put
I
the
don't know,
oleanders
I
in
didn't
here.
like these.
Yeah.
I see
Right.
what you're saying.
I sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
it's
was
not a
not-
matter
Direction
of
to
what
do
company
that.
you like or
I
don't like,
try to
it's a
figure out
matter of
from which
what
group, you
landscape
or
do we
the-
like
Well,
or
it
not
was
not
like,
from
'cause
us,
you can have
it also
anybody put
was
it in.
not at a board meeting, because when Jonathan came to the board meeting, the oleanders were in his plan. Kathleen said that, but I remember that
They
in
were.
his plan,
They were, that's
because I
the
hadn't
thing.
seen it until I looked at it when we were sitting here waiting for the meeting to start.
Yeah, cause here's what we handed out at the meeting, it's the same thing that you just saw.
Right.
And I wasn't
I'm
here.
trying to remember the sequence of events.
That wasn't at this meeting, that was at the board.
No, that was at the board meeting, that
CBD
plan was handed out.
meeting.
Right.
This plan was handed out to us.
Yeah,
Right.
Can I see that? May I see that, Kevin?
and that was totally different from what they had.
Well, no,
Not
it's still,
totally,
no,
but-
it's got a lot of the same stuff in the Green Island ficus and all that stuff, a lot of those plants are the same. It's the oleanders that they added, the,
Right.
buttonwood was there, the Alexander palms were there.
Yeah, Alexander and Buttonwood were there,
I
right?
remember the sequence
And
of
we,
events.
and you asked them to
You
get
guys
rid of
remember?
the,
Well, I wasn't here, that
No,
was
You
you
my
asked them to
problem.
get rid
They
of the
did.
Waxahachie grass.
Right,
Yeah.
right, that's what you asked.
yeah, cause we agreed that there's too much of that on Gateway Boulevard and it just doesn't look
Right.
Right,
attractive.
and that was the only thing you asked them to change.
Correct.
Well, I tell you, I know that I didn't think that Mainscape's presentation was that attractive, but after seeing the two of them,
Like theirs better.
Yeah, you're back to square one. Well, this, and you know, here to digress to our just past conversation, this is why I was talking, I'm more concerned that we give the designer, you know, be it, as we've said now, Dave Jones, and if something fails and we go to Land's architect, that we give them the flavor that we're kind of feeling or thinking, rather than them just try to read our minds and create what they think is good for us.
Right.
Then because I think in the long run, this is gonna create,
Mainscape drew it up
Maintenance for the
3
whole community.
times. And the last one was nice.
I'm trying to recall where that direction came from to put in oleanders, other than color. Height and color, I think.
One of the
Was that
simple-
the topic?
The minutes don't even show any of that.
Wasn't it this
No,
meeting?
it wasn't at our meeting.
No?
No.
Nope. Nope. We did
Board of
talk about it.
Supervisors have input in that?
No, they didn't. I don't remember them, I don't remember them getting into at that level. Do you? I mean, you,
Yeah, no, nothing at the, he came with the whatever you call them. And then,
Overlanders?
yeah, those, he came with those, and they weren't in the other one, because I even I said to Paul, where do they come from? Because that's not what you had approved at this meeting.
I know the people of Stony Brook don't want oleanders.
No, we don't, I know that.
They really don't want them. Cause everybody calls me and says, don't let that happen.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if the
And I
people,
did post on our bulletin board, to go on the website, to make comments.
Good.
That would be an
or
idea.
tell them to send comments to me or you and we'll.
No, but I did, I
share 'em,
posted
but-
already on the bulletin board to go on Gateway Services,
at Stony Brook.
yeah, at Stony Brook, to make comments on them, so I'm surprised that nobody,
Yeah, I thought we did.
I mean, cause I thought that would be
I know.
They'll
something
wait
they
till
would
we
be
plant
interested
it and
in.
then they'll bitch
Yeah.
at us.
Well, especially like Margaret Feinstein,
Margaret Feinberg.
Because I know she was kinda adamant about, I know she wanted color and,
She wanted color, but she doesn't want oleanders.
No, because of the poisonous.
well, I say she is a representative of Stony Brook.
But I did put an FYI and told them what to do, to go look at them, and to make comments.
Where did it?
No
Well,
one-
we've made a recommendation to the board. I'm not exactly sure where we go from here, other than we can all go on the website and make comments.
Oh, no, it's the Stony Brook website. I mean, you can make it on this
No,
one,
on the
yeah.
Gateway's website, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But of all the 12 people that ever look at our website.
Well, yeah, but you have to give all that information to the board.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm
And
just.
see, I've got multiple email addresses, so can I send one from each one?
I'm so glad that you agree with me.
I'm trying to recall
It was a
why
horrible
Jonathan
drawing.
made that
That's
change.
why I didn't approve
I have
that.
to go back and look at your.
And where we
If
got,
there was
you
more
know,
room,
what,
if it was a wider
what
median.
prompted him to do that?
But there isn't.
And that's the,
Yeah, I have no
Everything's
idea.
gonna look
What board
leggy.
meeting was?
Those Alexander palms, they stay little.
We met on
Yeah, they're saying
September
they're only about
twenty-second,
40.
and it was the board meeting right after that.
So it would have been October,
Well, I was there and
Fifth.
Kathleen was there.
can we check the
And
minutes?
she's right, he came in.
Of the board
with
meeting?
that-
Yeah.
It was the board meeting on the eighth.
Hey, yeah.
Scott, can I just look at that?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
I don't know, too much time has gone by.
Well, do we wanna go back and, change our recommendation? Or
Upon further
modify
review.
it, or do something?
Can we do that?
We can do anything, I guess. Not sure what the board will do with it, but we certainly have that ability.
Yeah, I have a full set of working drawings, irrigation plans, and Insight completed their
oh,
task.
that's your.
Yeah.
I think he is.
But if we wanna
too.
swap out the plants.
It depending-
We have to pay them to modify the plant.
Yeah, it depends what we're swapping, but yeah, we might be able to do that with the contractor.
All right. Diane's looking at the minutes from the board meeting November 8th.
I'll be back in 1 second.
We really didn't talk about it.
Dyrex,
Thrynax.
they are so much more attractive
There's
than
no
anything that's on
discussion
this
on
other
the-
plan.
Yeah, well, you can get
On
them
that-
bigger.
On that
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah. And I hate
What's that?
for our
Oh,
name
right,
to be
so
on
I
that
thought it was on
name,
it,
that
and Insight
medium,
wasn't.
Oh, yeah,
if it's
that
gonna
was-
look like that.
Insight just missed it, putting in the RFQ.
Because the people are gonna be mad
Right.
when they
There
see
isn't
it, they're gonna
anything.
be mad.
Yeah, there was
Because they're
no,
gonna say, good God, that's not
I
pretty.
mean, I don't,
Yeah. Well, I'm concerned about the maintenance out there.
We
Well,
did
the
share your
maintenance on the other one is
suggestions.
atrocious.
I had to stop and think about it, but yes,
Yeah.
Scott and I shared all the suggestions that came in within.
Thank you.
oh, yeah, there's a board meeting, HOA meeting at 5:30, yeah. The notes of, the CDD board meeting on November 8th don't make reference to a change in any of the plantings. So I don't know where Jonathan got his direction from.
No, because Jonathan brought this plan.
Right.
So the board approved what we're seeing there. How it got from the 22nd
Well-
to the 8th to be different, I don't know.
Can
Looks
I
to me
call
like
him
it's
and
September
talk to him?
22nd to October 8th, the
October
plan
1st.
changed.
October
Oh,
1st.
October 1st, sorry.
Or October
I-
1st,
I-
okay, whatever that first
Yeah.
meeting was.
It appears to me that all he did is he replaced the Fakahatchee plants with oleanders. We didn't tell him what to use.
I
Well,
thought
then they
the,
should have been dwarfed.
yeah, I thought the Fakahatchee.
Oh, no, you're right, you're right. It is.
It's in the middle.
No, you're right, my mistake then.
Seems like
So
the
he's
small
replaced
plant
that
is
with
dwarfed
something else.
oleanders.
What's there at the,
He
on the
doesn't-
ground?
Those big ones
Well,
are-
this is the palms.
Cocoa plum.
People like this.
What
He
are you saying?
replaced all of Fakahatchee with cocoa plum. And
Oh,
then
there it is.
added these in the middle.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Green Island
okay,
ficus.
that's exactly right.
Cocoa Palm?
Yep. They're underneath the
Oh,
silver
horizontal
buttwoods.
cocoa palm, yeah.
Correct, that's what he put in place of the Fakahatchee.
Don't plants grow vertical? I'm sorry.
No, they're horizontal. I've not seen them in the, have you seen them?
You gotta learn to be a better landscaper, Scott.
Not too much in engineering.
No, I don't know if that'll grow too much
I'm just
sideways.
a contractor. Well, interesting.
Maybe we should talk to Jonathan.
I mean, I can, I'll try to make a clarification with Jonathan, how and why that happened, and, what is the preference is to, in lieu of the, well, two things, right? Change out the Alexander palm to the, what did you call it?
I would prefer changing to Mainscape's design rather than insides. If you're, the whole thing is off balance to me.
Well,
I got
That-
some issues with mainscapes, but design, but, and then we paid somebody else to
Right.
do the design. Why
right,
would
I
we
mean,
use-
that's where we're caught in, we don't look very, very smart.
Well, let me ask you a question. Earlier, we talked about changing out, I mean, the possibility, changing the Alexander palm to what palm?
Thrynex, Thri.
Oh, that's what that word is?
Yeah, Thrynex, Thrinax.
Yeah.
That would help.
What's the common name?
Thatch,
Thatch?
thatch,
Thank you.
yeah, thatch palm. And you can find them, with 6 foot of wood on them.
Yeah, if you can get them of the right size, then that's probably something Lee County would buy off on. We'd have to explain that to them, but.
Mm.
And then.
Well, you can also tell them, they may be a little small, I mean, they'll know they grow, but also, it's a native,
Yeah.
so that could be a selling point too in regards to.
And then taking the
changing it.
oleanders out and putting in something else?
I don't know, would you put in more thatch palms?
Well, I think you get into a sightline there, Paul.
Yeah, you don't
You
wanna
don't
do
get
that.
color
We
either.
need something.
What's,
flowers, or-
Kevin,
put
what's
those in
under
to bring
the,
color.
what's under the oleanders?
A
Peanut.
Green Island ficus?
Oh, yeah, there's
Yeah,
the
Green
Green
Island
Island.
ficus.
I'm sorry, I'll go back to that.
Well, there's green island ficus in the middle and perennial peanut on the ends,
Yeah.
on the sides.
Right.
Screwed up there.
Ellie, what do you think about suggesting, the dwarf Taiwanensis exors rather than the green ficus? What we've seen with
Yeah,
green
but-
ficus, you get about 2 years and then all of a sudden it's just another hedgerow you gotta trim all the time.
Yeah, right, and they tend to wanna grow horizontally, you
Yeah.
gotta keep pruning them back to keep them in their nice little shape. And the, Ixoras, they're gonna bloom a lot and they will give you some color.
Right.
Going back
And
to,
they can be pruned back, they don't mind being,
Well, those you only really have to cut the tops on, cause they're
Yeah.
gonna grow up more vertical.
I think what Jonathan was trying to do by bringing in the oleanders was to add color.
Understood.
Okay. At height, not low, but a tree with color, if you will.
It's just, I mean, if you match what was proposed, it was definitely smaller than where Jonathan's coming in with this, with Insight. I mean, this is instant gratification, and instant impact. But a lot of times with those kind of things, you know, it looks great now, and it may be a little bit less expensive, but then it becomes you know, it's pay me now or pay me later. You know, it's kinda like putting in, over in Stony Brook, you know, they had an opportunity to get rid of a ficus hedge, and they replanted the ficus hedge, right?
Well,
And that's
treated it-
because it's cheap,
It's-
$3 a gallon, instead of maybe paying a little bit more and getting something that was a little bit slower and something that was a native.
Do you remember that tree I sent you, that picture? Cassia? It was yellow.
Cassius?
It was real short. It was,
Bernesia? Bolonesia?
Well, there's yellow cassius, county's got some of them in some of the roadway medians.
it was
Yeah.
really.
But they
One of the
tend to
biggest
get a little
problems that we
wider
had
than
with them
that
is we
too.
couldn't keep them standing up, the
Right.
wind blow them over.
Right.
You have to stake them with 3
Yeah,
stakes.
we have-
Oh, yeah, just, they were a constant headache getting
Wet,
blown
yeah.
over.
Well,
Bolonesia?
It was like a weeping, a sienna,
Oh, yeah, Stephen Brown looked at that,
yeah,
yeah.
it was.
It was a
care
sienna.
was easy. Desert or something,
Desert cassia?
something like that.
This is such a tight median. It's really hard to use, you know, plants. I mean, if you look at, Colonial Boulevard from 6 Mile Cypress to Lee Boulevard, you know, they've done a nice job with oleanders, but they have room.
yeah,
Right.
that's with,
They have room. You know, they use Simpson stopper as a filler, but they have room. You know, they started out with 7-gallon plants that were,
The Green Island,
2 foot wide.
buttonwood is too big, so is the, oleanders.
Well, we got
Well,
about
yeah.
5 minutes, we gotta get out of here, so.
Right.
Why don't we
Well,
ask the
that-
Board of Supervisors to let us go back, get another drawing?
well, I really hate to do that, cause it takes away from our credibility. But I was wondering if, in looking at, isn't the peanut grass under the oleanders? I don't have the, Kevin, is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, no, under the oleanders?
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
because
we're
there's-
on the new drawing, right.
Okay,
Down
so-
the center, you have the Green Island ficus, and then it's flanked by peanut grass.
okay, well, how about this? So then that way that doesn't totally skew it, that,
Okay.
you know, we're not happy with what we said we did like, so then we're back to square one. How about if we suggest that maybe, rather than annuals, because annuals is a high maintenance thing, that we suggest that we expand the peanut grass into the annual bed. And then, where the, Green Island ficus is, that we suggest maybe
Dwarf Ixorias.
dwarf ixoras.
Is this your?
Just 2 subtle
Yes.
changes, but then if we use the dwarf ixoras, that means we can get rid of the oleanders.
Well, Jerry, one of the reasons we had a discussion last time about the
Okay.
annual beds, we're gonna take them out, then we said, no, let's leave them back in.
Okay.
Because it ties the rest of the community, cause if you drive down the rest of Gateway Boulevard, they got annual beds throughout there.
Okay,
So, probably,
well, I stand corrected then.
no, it's just,
No, I mean, I appreciate that
Yeah,
background,
that
is
was
what I'm
our
saying.
reason, because we first decided we were gonna take them out, and then we ended up putting them back.
Right.
Because we were gonna do just what you were
Oh,
suggesting.
okay.
So the only change you're talking about making is to change the Green Island ficus to dwarf Ixoria.
Which gets rid of the oleanders and the Green Island
and-
ficus.
And take out the oleanders in total, and then to switch the Alexander palms to thatch palms.
Yeah. Maybe we have to live with the Alexanders as the trade-off. Cause now that I'm,
How big of a trunk does the thatch palm get if you get a 6-foot wood tree?
it's not gonna be much thicker than an Alexander.
What if instead?
It's just that
we don't-
because it's a palmate leaf, the head is fuller.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's a native, I mean, I think at this point, we're probably gonna have to eat our words on some of it, and maybe if we can trade this for that, then save some face.
So the Alexanders maybe not as important to switch out, but
Right.
it would be nice. Okay.
Right. It may be that,
Deserts.
you know, oleanders and silver buttonwood, it's better to get rid of them from a maintenance issue, but live with the Alexanders.
Why not use
Well,
these
Yeah.
little Cyrax?
Well, that's what we're talking about. I mean, as
That's
I
a
keep
fact.
talking, I'm substituting every plant they had, and if we do that, then it's like, well, like what Kevin said, why did we?
Yeah, but we want
Do
to
this.
have it look nice.
But it, you know, I mean, we've got a little bit of an argument. Well, it all looks nice. To me, the thing that I keep going back to is the maintenance issue. And, you know, with what Kevin had as the written design as compared to the pretty colorful design,
Kevin,
you know, maybe we can,
what do you think of that?
That's the one I said.
you know, get a couple of
Get your
changes.
people to vote.
We can get them on the website.
I mean,
I mean, that always changes votes.
I put a flyer in the library,
Yeah,
one on a table, and
we're still there.
then I put one on the bulletin board.
I'm not familiar
I
with
don't have
that.
permission to ask them to email. 'Cause
Okay, so what are we doing here? It's called the Desert Cassia.
Is that
And
what?
I don't know how it would do. That's because the Cassia's the ones we just,
Yeah,
the
those-
county had.
It's still gonna get wide. That's our problem.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good size.
You only
plant,
get 6
yeah.
foot there.
Is that ahead, oh, you mean width 6 feet?
Well, I'm talking about the roadway is only
A friend of
6 foot
mine-
wide,
A friend of
right?
mine has that in her front yard, and it's very tiny. It doesn't, I don't think it gets more than, I'm gonna say 15 feet, 10 feet at the most, and it's only, it's kind of like a
Is it
weeping cherry, like I
Right.
think of northern, or, it's just
That
very
has good root base.
delicate. It's got a small trunk.
Is it messy though? It looks like that's a.
It could drop, it's got those pods, it
bet
does
it's
have
not.
pods.
I bet it's
But
not
it
native,
said
yeah.
it did have a good root system, and, it was a straight
not.
tree.
Well, it may be something to incorporate on the rest to get some more color.
Right of way.
Yeah. And then still have that little bit
So-
of room.
So we
I mean,
wanna write
Stephen
up
Brown's
these,
dying to have them somewhere.
do we wanna write up these comments and send them to the board as a supplement to what we did? Since, and one of the reasons being is that for whatever reason, the plan changed from what we approved.
Right.
to
Yeah,
What was
there
taken
you
to the
go.
board.
I mean, that,
Yeah.
I think that's the angle to use.
Okay. You want me to get you an email and say all that, Scott?
That'd be great, but just for my simplification, swapping out Alexander palms with the thatch
Well,
palm
I-
recommendation?
That
Yeah.
would be a possibility. That's probably the last in the list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're
Then
starting from the bottom of the list, working up.
Okay, then you're changing out the green island ficus, going with the
Dwarf Ixoria.
Mhm.
Okay, that'd be like the first one, number one. What's number two? What?
Remove the oleander.
Oh, yeah.
No, probably number one and number two is remove the oleander and remove the green buttonwood.
What's
Yes,
that one?
Silver button.
silver button.
Silver buttonwood. Right. Somebody suggested
do,
maybe
it's so
green would be
soft.
better.
Silver buttonwood gets that
Removing that.
Yep,
sooty stuff on it
Yeah.
all the time too.
yep. I'll get you an
All
email.
right, yeah, please.
Probably won't be till this weekend because I'm gonna be gone the next few days, but I'll get you an email before next Monday for sure.
Okay.
All right?
Yep,
I make a motion, we resign?
resign?
Resign or?
Adjourn, not resign.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn the
Adjourn.
meeting. Any other comments or
Just the
thoughts?
next meeting.
Our next meeting is set for November 24th at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And Scott will have gone to the board hopefully with the ranking on the architect,
I
landscape
might-
architects, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, I'll
I
advise them at
have
their next
had,
meeting.
Okay,
conversations
Okay.
about trimming the oak, clean and lift on
All right.
all of the oak trees.
Thank you.
sounds good, thanks.
Um,
Thank you very much.
I
Thank
have
you.
like $10,000 to do.